Yeah, then the next generation will be the baby boomers. Baby boomers, this would be the generation that came after the Second World War. So replenishing the families and the children, so baby boomers there, they would be aged between the age of 61 up to 75. And then we have Generation X. Generation X would be those that were born between 1961 and 1980. And those would be aged around 41 all the way up to 60 years. Then we have the fourth one, which is Generation Y. Generation Y is also called millennials. Now, millennials is a common term. We hear it over and over. So these millennials, that would be the age there would be between 26 years of age and 40 years of age. And then we have Generation Z. That's the one we are discussing today. That is the one that aged between, so this is born between 96 all the way up to 2015. That would be aged 6 years all the way up to 25 years. And I believe that most of the students in campus now would be in Generation Z. Now, let me do a disclaimer now. This subject has been discussed by many people, and you will find different platforms or different documents speaking about different, let me say, varying years. So you might find, for instance, millennials, they will tell you they begin from 1984 all the way up to 1996. So it varies, but by and large, the ones I've presented here are not very different from what you would find in those other forums. So let's look at for a short while. Let's look at the formative experiences that defined this generation. So for the first one, you would find the Second World War and fixed gender roles was key. The second one, you'd find Cold War and post-war boom and on and on. And then Generation X, you will find the introduction of personal computer. And then you also find something to do around Margaret Thatcher, Thatcherism, and rise in divorce. The millennials, there's something significant there on 9/11 bombing or terrorism. And the whole discussion around terrorism is a critical one. PlayStation came into place during that period of time. And then we also have social media coming through at that time. In fact, the people who were born around this time, as they grew up and their teenagehood and getting into their 20s, reality TV, social media was becoming a significant thing. So you find people aged between 26 and 40 years, find Uber and Taxify and on, a very central aspect of their lives. Because at that age, they have started working, they have some little money they can spend on Uber and on. And that's the age where I belong. And my age mates use Uber like nobody's business. I can't believe the use of Uber and Taxify. I mean, it's very common among the millennials. Now, Generation Z. So you have issues around global warming, mobile devices, cloud computing. And organizations like Google and others are making a lot of money on cloud computing based on Generation Z. Netflix and Spotify is something important to Generation Z. Google search, YouTube, and on. Calculator in schools. In my generation, we still would not be allowed to use calculators. And I find that now Generation Z, they use calculators, and I can't believe that. And then you also have this thing coming up among Generation Z. It's called DIY and vlogging. Now that is a common language among the Generation Z. DIY and vlogging is a common one. Now, when it comes to aspirations, so let me jump all that and come to Generation Y and Z. So Generation Y, the aspiration is on freedom and flexibility. My age mates, we want to have our freedom. We want to enjoy flexibility, even in the work environment. And then for Generation Z, there's a key thing there on security and stability. My security and my stability is critical. And something you will identify with high battery charge. The common thing there is my phone charged? You know, when your phone gives you an alarm and it tells you it is below 10%, that is a nightmare for Generation Z. And so that's a critical thing there that Generation Z is going through. When it comes to attitudes towards technology. So the first one, maturities are largely disengaged. They don't even bother too much about that. Boomers, baby boomers, they have early IT adapters. They started to adapt onto this IT when it was starting, because IT found them when they were in their 40s. They were a little older and they would adapt. Then we have the Generation X, the digital immigrants. So they are still having a hybrid of the past and the current one and the digital life. So you find those ones, they have a hybrid. Some of them do it successfully, some of them don't do it very well. Generation Y are digital natives. They were born when IT was now starting to become the in thing. The IT revolution was beginning. The digital innates, now these are Generation Z. When they were conceived, IT was there. When they were born, they found it there. In fact, when their names were being registered, they were using a computer in the hospital to register their names. They found technology already ongoing, and so their life depends on IT. Talking about attitudes towards work. So Generation Y, these are digital entrepreneurs. They will use the digital space to make their money. Somebody will leave a good job in a bank or somewhere, and they will go and be a digital entrepreneur. And something important about Generation Y when it comes to attitude towards work is they want to work with organizations rather than for organizations. Now, for the earlier generations, they worked for organizations. Now, these generations, the one we have now in their 26 to 40s, they work with organizations. Now, when it comes to Generation Z, there is some twist that is coming through there, is that they are career multitaskers. They move seamlessly between organizations one to another because they believe that they are the brand. Did you get that? I am the brand, so organizations need me. I don't need them. When it comes to the signature product for these generations, the Generation Z, you have the Google Glass. Google Glass is now coming up. I don't know whether you know that. You wear it, and in it you can see, it speaks to you, and you speak back to it, and you can be seeing something as you walk. So you're walking and you have some glasses on, but you're watching a movie. There's something going on as you walk, and that's becoming key. Nanocomputing almost to the micro, the smallest unit of computing. That is a big thing. 3D printing, driverless cars. Those would be important things to acknowledge in Generation Z. I'm trying to move fast. Prevalent hobbies. Prevalent hobbies for the first generation is reading. Second generation is watching traditional TV. You know, the analog TV, they would log into KBC and they would be faithful with it. The prevalent one in Generation X is surfing the internet. You know, for Generation Z, if you tell them surfing, they actually don't understand. What do you mean? What is surfing? All right. But Generation X, surfing is what they understand. Now, for Generation Y, the hobbies there would be video games and PlayStation. And then for Generation Z, it is music streaming and movies. So your ministry needs to acknowledge this thing. This is the environment that Generation Z is living in. When it comes to medium of communication, the first generation valued formal letter. The second one is the telephone, both landline and booth. The other day I was telling my children about booths, and they couldn't fathom, they couldn't understand. So I showed them a video of how the telephone booth would look like. And they cannot even imagine how this thing used to work because they're in the generation Z. Then on communication, medium of communication, the generation that is age 41 to 60 value emails and text message, especially emails. Now, when it comes to my generation now, it starts to shift more towards text and social media. So you send someone an email, they have not looked at the email for a long time until you remind them. But this earlier generation was very faithful in checking emails. Now, my generation now, we still value the emails, but it is starting to die out. We are starting to have more communication on social media. The other day, I was having a meeting with one of my mentors, and so he asked me to send him a document. Then I found myself asking him, is it okay for me to attach it to you on WhatsApp? And he laughed because he's wondering, how do you attach WhatsApp? Attachment is always on email. But now we are moving more towards sending documents on WhatsApp. Then my generation also loves Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. But now for Generation Z, things are changing. We are on Instagram, they are on TikTok, they are on Snapchat, and another one will come, and another one will come. My generation will wait to go and sit on the laptop. Generation Z will have handheld gadgets. They will be doing it on the move. They are writing notes on the move. They are listening to something and making their notes on the move, and on and on. Communication preference for these generations, as you have seen them there, but I will jump to Generation Y and Z. For Y, Generation Y, the preferred communication model would be online and mobile. For Generation Z, it will be FaceTime. If you've not heard of something called FaceTime, Apple now has introduced a facility called FaceTime. So instead of calling, you actually talk to somebody on the go and they can see your face. That is FaceTime or video call. And then there is something that's, sometimes I wonder, must you use emojis to communicate? So you send someone a message and then they send you an emoji, like this. So you're wondering now, what do you mean? Why don't you just give me a word But Generation Z acknowledges that and they value that. So when you want to communicate to a Generation Z, those are some things you must acknowledge that they will come in handy. Now, this is where the crux of the matter is. Ministry dynamics. Ministry dynamics. Now, for the baby boomers, the maturists, I think they are too old. I could not reflect on that with the time available. But for the baby boomers, hard copy hymn books is critical. Keep those hymn books behind the pews. I will find it and I will come and open my hymn number 26 and sing. Don't tell me about the screen. That's baby boomers for you. Those that are aged 61 to 70. But then when you come to Generation X, 41 to 60, so they appreciate both hard copy and digital Bible. So unapata mtu amekuja church na Bible ameibeba, but once in a while they use the digital Bible to make a reference here and there. This generation also valued or are very keen on televangelism. So they will open like TBN. This is the generation that watches TBN. They are faithful watchers of TBN. But when you come to Generation Y, the millennials, these guys are now moving more towards the digital Bible. If you tell them you Bible, everybody knows you Bible among the millennials. Then they value screen-aided worship. They go into a service and you do not have screens, then they just feel lost. They value that. So for you to minister to this group of people, you will need to invest in screens. Are we together, friends? And then I also noticed something to do with dreadlocks for men is acceptable in worship. I struggle with that myself. If I had my way, I would not allow dreadlocks in church. But it's been a battle. I have fought that battle, and it looks like I'm not going to win it. Because see, now it's neither here nor there. I'm sure you will run to Corinthians and talk about men's hair and ladies' hair. But when you do proper exegesis, really it's neither here nor there. Now let's go to Generation Z. Now this is a digital Bible generation. Those that will still have hard copy Bibles will be those that have come from a traditional background. They have not lived in the urban setting for a long time. They are just coming into the urban setting, but you will also find now, if you come to our church, for instance, and ask those who have carried physical Bibles to lift their hands, they are the minority. They are the minority. And I don't know the state in your Christian unions, but that is a trend that is coming slowly by slowly. Then online Bible study. Online Bible study is something that we must embrace. We must embrace that. I remember there was a time in our church we had procured on a hard copy Bible studies. Then, so we asked them to buy. It was not expensive. It was a fair, about 100 shillings. So we asked them to buy. The books were not being bought. What happened is that the few who bought the books did the screenshots. No, not screenshot. They took a picture. So they take a picture of page 1, page 2, and then they distribute. And then we ask them, come and buy. Nobody's buying the books. They want to be, when they go to Bible study, they have it on their phone. So they just open the phone and they have the Bible study there. So online Bible study, both the ones that you have in PDF or interactive forums in the online platform will be very important if you want to successfully minister to Generation Z. Online service. Online service. Now, this is a big one, and Corona has not made it easy for us. If you are not going to embrace online service, I think that is going to be a difficult time. And we have seen churches there that actually, yesterday I was talking to a friend who was really lamenting, as a pastor, that they did not successfully manage. It was a young church when Corona came. They did not successfully manage to embrace the online ministry. And they have struggled over the last 1 year. It's been a real struggle. And friend, I am telling you, if you are not going to embrace this, then there might be 1 or 2 issues there, even for the Christian unions. In fact, now I'm told that the Christian unions, like in KU, they are not able to hold physical meetings. And if they hold physical meetings, there's such a rigorous process for them to eventually meet. Now, if you embrace an online service, then some of those issues, you will find ways of navigating them and on and on. And then you see now they have the hybrid of first years and third years come, and then they are there for a few weeks and they go home, then second years and fourth years come. So you definitely would need an online service for you to be in touch with your members consistently. Personal online content. Now, this is important. Personal online content. There is a preacher that I observe. He's called T.D. Jakes. Now, I have a number of issues with T.D. Jakes, especially to do with his style of preaching and interpretation of scripture. But there is something that I admire about T.D. Jakes. I admire his embracing of the online space. Him as well as many other ministers have succeeded to adopt ways in which to be present in the online space. In fact, from the comfort of my house, I can actually chat with him, whether it is him who responds or another person. But I feel like I'm chatting with him. Now, the way he has succeeded to do that, I think God has been gracious to him in that sense. And I think that that's an important thing that ministers of the gospel ought to embrace. So you are somewhere, but if a young person chats you on your YouTube page or on your Facebook page or Instagram, then you need to be able to respond. Give them an experience that you are actually with them, even when you're not the one responding immediately. Of course, you can go back later and now look at the kind of response and discussion that was there, because sometimes it's just too much. Then the other one is the concept that church is a movement, not a club for few. Christians, we ought to really re-examine this. Generation Z looks at church as a movement. Successful churches, look at, for instance, Nairobi City and other major cities. The churches that have successfully succeeded to bring in Generation Z in their forums are churches that use or look at church as a movement. Take, for example, Parklands Baptist. Young people in Nairobi look at Parklands Baptist not as a church, but as a movement. Look at Mavuno. There could be a number of issues with Mavuno Church, but Mavuno Church is being looked at as a movement in the Nairobi city. So you will need to find ways of readjusting this school of thought. I struggle with it myself, but really it is the way these things are going. The other thing that Generation Z has embraced as far as ministry dynamics is concerned is ministry through apps. There is an app called Kuza. Kuza is a discipleship app that has been developed recently by very sober Christians. And Kuza is an app that is used for discipleship. And there are many other apps that have come up. Now, that is the direction to go with Generation Z. Now, we can talk on and on, but let me move on swiftly to the marks of Generation Z in way of summary. Number one is that Generation Z responds to, so they respond to relationships rather than rules. So if you want to successfully minister to Generation Z, reduce your rules, build on relationships. When one has a relationship with them, they listen to that person more than the rules that have been put in place. They will listen to you properly if you have a relationship with them. And one of the ways to do this is to invite them to your home, invite them to your room, take a trip with them, and just do life with them. Generation Z will listen to you and use that opportunity to share the gospel. That's why a young person will travel all the way to go and attend service in a very far place just because a particular person is there. They have a relationship with that pastor or that minister of the gospel. That relationship is very important. So they will leave this church that is 100 meters from where they live and go to that far place because of a relationship. Number two, they are loyal to personalities rather than, they are loyal to personalities rather than organizations or the office that a person holds. Now, that one is not written well, but it's supposed to be, they are loyal to personalities rather than organizations. So you can add there, rather than organizations or an office that the person holds. What I mean there is, so for instance, I'm a reverend. If I am going to use my title to introduce myself, then it's already something that is a problem for Generation Z. So when I go to Generation Z, I start by saying, my name is Silas. Sometimes I even use my nickname. I say, mi naitwa Silo. By the time they come to discover you're a reverend, you've already connected. They already know your football club. They already know your hobby. So they already have a connection with you. So the office that I hold really does not matter to them. What matters to them is that, are you authentic? Are you displaying authenticity? Do you live with us? Do you eat pizza or you don't eat pizza? You know, the person is so if you're going to Generation Z, you need to recognize their way of life, not necessarily live like them. Actually, they do not expect me to listen to their music, but they expect me to respect or at least acknowledge the music they love. Do you get the difference? Because sometimes older ministers struggle in this area. You do not expect me to go and dance to Bazokizo, for instance. It's going to be a nightmare for me. But as I interact with them, I acknowledge that this Bazokizo business, they really love it. So we begin from that point. Then you can now move to the next point and ask, what is the message of Bazokizo? Now that's different from, if you are listening to Bazokizo, then you are a shallow Christian. Now, if that is my entrance to them, I have already lost them. So the office you hold really does not matter. It will be less of pastor has said or reverend has said. It will be more of, does he understand me? Does he feel me? So that's important. That's a mark of Generation Z. Number 3 is that they are attracted to experiential learning rather than a plenary setup. They are attracted to experiential learning rather than a plenary setup. For example, I told you that our church is predominantly young people. We organized a fun day last Saturday. The young people came in their numbers. The older generation, 30 and above, were not there. Very few of them were there. But 30 years and below, they were the majority in that event. Why? Because of the experiential nature of a fun day. Now, at the end of the function, we were now reflecting on the scripture that I think that should be 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8, about physical exercise profits less compared to spiritual exercise or spiritual growth. And the young people connected with that lesson. Why? Because they have experienced physical exercise or physical training during the day. Now, when you're telling them and trying to do exegesis on that scripture, it connects with them big time. Experiential learning. If I were to organize a seminar, for instance, and talk about spiritual disciplines, I am likely to get 30 years and above. Why? Because they will be okay sitting down and being addressed for 1 hour, 1.5, 2 hours. They will be okay with that. But Generation Z will struggle with that. So what is the alternative? The alternative is forums that are dynamic, but secondly, small groups. And I know that young people in CUs especially use small groups a lot. Now, small groups is a big tool for Generation Z. Small groups is a big one for Generation Z, and we ought to take advantage of small groups. But as you do small groups, do not just do one thing. Do not just do Bible study. Also include other things within the small group arrangement. Have many other things there. Have interactive sessions within that time. Then the other one is also having live and real-time interactive sessions on sermons. There's a program that we run in our church called The Experience. The Experience is a service that happens on Thursday, but the marks of the experience is it has small groups, it has interactive services. So, sermons. So I'll be preaching. I will start by asking them, so our topic today, for instance, we were talking the other day about what? About hope for the future. Then you ask them a question, then they tell you what hope for the future is, blah, blah, blah. And then as you go on into your sermon, you do a question, an interactive question, and then hear what they have to say, and then use the authority of scripture to stamp the truths of God's word on the issues that they raised. If you are going to speak for 1 hour, they will have switched off because they have their phone, their Bible is on the phone. So if you go too long for 1 hour and they're not able to concentrate, they will switch to something else. Concentration levels are low. Hey, so I've said that they are attracted to experiential learning rather than the plenary setup. Number 4, they question the status quo. They question the status quo, the beliefs, the traditions, and culture in relation to the Christian faith. So they will ask you about naming. Why must I be named like this? Why must you do that when a child is born? They will ask you, must I be circumcised? You know, Generation Z is not the type that you tell that, are you from our tribe? Ask, we circumcised. Then they'll ask you, why must I circumcise? That's Generation Z for you. The other day they were asking me, I met a young man, so he's in a relationship, then he's starting to ask me, must I do a wedding? Now, then I'm trying to scratch my mind. I'm saying, so he says, so tell me why I must do a wedding. Now I had to examine my theology again. Of course, the Bible has many instances of weddings in the wedding Cana and on, and the example of Joseph, Mary, and on. But why must I do a wedding? That's a critical one that Generation Z will ask you. The earlier generations will do a wedding simply because we do weddings. Generation Z will ask you, must you bury me when I die? Or can I be cremated? You know, in Generation Y, cremation, don't even mention cremation. Generation Z will say, I want to be cremated. And then you're saying, the Bible says, you're trying to look at scripture, you're not finding. Generation Z will challenge your theology. So you do not go to Generation Z with preconceived ideas that you have not properly studied from God's word. You need to be sober in your theology as you engage Generation Z. And we can go on and on, but time fails us. Let me do the 5th one. Is that they challenge formal wear in church and in the workplace. Must I wear a suit to church or in the service? And they struggle with that. They will come with t-shirts, they will come with all manner of clothes. You're wondering, did you just wake up? Is this your pajama? And they have it in the service. And they are there with you. So would you rather have them with what do they call that? I think they call it sweatpants, if I'm not wrong. So they will come with a sweatpant in the service and you're wondering, my brother, how did you leave the house with this? You almost feel like this is a sleeping attire, but they're comfortable with it. Now, when they eventually, so wearing a suit will be a problem, but when they eventually get to wearing a suit, then you'll be wondering, is this really a suit? First of all, they have not tucked in. So they have a coat and a shirt and a trouser, but it is not tucked in. So the person in their 50s is wondering, this young man, what are you wearing? They are just fine. And then they have something that resembles a tie. It is so narrow, and you're wondering, is this a tie or is it a string? I keep asking those questions. But that's Generation Z for you. Some of them go to work in shorts. And you're wondering, did you just wear a short to work? And some come to church in shorts. And that's Generation Z for you. Now, one might say, and this is important to think through. One might say that this is only a season, but is that really a season? Now, my submission is that some of these trends are here to stay, especially among members of Generation Z. Some, of course, will die with age, but some are there to stay. Some are there to stay. You remember earlier on, when you meet an older person and you're greeting them, you will remove your cape. Now, things have changed with Generation Z. With Generation Z, they don't remove their capes. The cape will be on, they will remove their earphones and then greet you. And I'm wondering, this young man, you can't remove that cape. So I've struggled with that a few times with them. Now I'm wondering whether it's a battle worth fighting. Effective ministry, just summarizing as I finish, is that effective ministry to Generation Z, number one, is keep the sound doctrine, sound gospel, but vary the mode of transmission. This is the most important guideline in reaching Generation Z. Keep sound doctrine, keep to the gospel of Jesus Christ, but vary the mode of communication. Number two, relook at your philosophy. Now, let me just go back a little to number one. As we talk about keeping to sound doctrine, it's important that we, for instance, issues to do with language. You see, the church, if you study church history, the Catholic Church stuck to the issue that Latin was the language of worship. But the generation that were coming challenged that status quo. And now that is even being challenged more. If you are telling me to worship either in strict English or in strict Swahili, then Generation Z will challenge that a little bit because, first of all, they do not even speak Swahili Sanifu. So, and their English is so distorted. So you will need to find ways of packaging the gospel in ways that are relevant to that generation. But I also noticed something, that in as much as the average Generation Z will appreciate the Western contemporary gospel music, you know, you have the Bethel type and on, they also have a value for good Swahili gospel music, sound Swahili gospel music with a twist of urban flavor. So that's why people like Evelyn Wanjiru and Rebecca Dawn now are trending among that generation because they will sing a Swahili song, but it will have some urban twist to it. You will know this group from Nairobi Chapel South Sea called Songs and Stories. Now, Songs and Stories, the reason they are growing popular on YouTube is because they infuse both contemporary discussions within worship and they have a twist of songs in Swahili and English. They have new renditions of hymns and on. And Generation Z is connecting with them in tremendous ways. Now that, you need to check that. You need to check that. And number two, let me move to number two quickly because we have only 5 minutes for this. Number two is relook at your philosophy in the...
Yes? Now 5 minutes.
5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me hurry through to finish. So, number two, relook at your philosophy on the medium of scripture transmission. This has been a big one. This has been a big one. So, is it hard copy Bible or is it digital Bible? I find myself in discussions and arguments with people over and over saying the hard copy Bible is the way to go. Okay, of course, my generation, the discussion was King James was the way to go. Now the discussion has moved from King James. Now we acknowledge that it's not only King James. Now it's NIV. We're moving to ESV and on and on. So for the Generation Z, the discussion is it digital or is it hard copy? So that discussion must be engaged. And my submission is that we ought to disciple Generation Z to properly use and engage the digital Bible. Because kuna wakora pia wameingia kwa digital space, wanatupatia vitu zingine ambazo sio Bible ya kweli. Anyway, number three, acknowledge the fundamental place of music as a medium of worship. This is a big one for Generation Z. And I think that Generation Z are not necessarily opposed to hymns, for instance, but they struggle with the notion.
Your slides are not coming on my end. I don't know if
Oh, thank you, brother. Now that's why you are there. That's why
we can see them. Rev, I think it's the other
can
side.
See them now. You can see them.
Yeah, we can.
Now they have come. All right. So let me just put all of them. Then I finish. So acknowledge the place. So they are not opposed to hymns, but they struggle with the notion that hymns are the most powerful Christian songs. So hymns is not a problem, but when you now start to tell me that hymns is the most powerful, now Generation Z will start to question that. Number 4, invest in a robust church or gospel experience. There's no way out on this one. We've got to invest in a robust church experience in the online space. Create interactive online services, ministry platforms, apps. Think about all those things and on and on. And number 5, and the last one, is that create more experiential ministry forums. If there are camps, let the young people be in the forefront of doing these camps and on with adult guidance. And we can go on and on. I would like to conclude by posing the big question is, how do we enculturate the Christian faith in such a way that people attribute scriptural meanings to cultural forms? Now, we don't have time to unpack that, but the Christian faith is supraculture. It fits into the culture that exists. So how do we successfully have the Christian faith fit into the culture that we find? That's an important one. How do we guard against over contextualization? And theologians have called that syncretism. Let me read Corinthians as I finish. I would like to say, and this is very important, and Paul did it. He says, though I am free and belong to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew. To the Jew, I became like a Jew, to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. I have become all things to all men, so that by all means I might save some. I do this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. The reason Paul can speak like this is, 1, because he knew who he was. He knows his identity in Christ. Number 2, he knew his mission. And number 3, he knew his context. Know who you are, know your mission, know your context. God bless you.